Welcome once again to 3 to 5 things we didn't have time to talk about today. I'm your host, Fred Kennedy. No need for plus. I'm your host, Fred Kennedy, and first up today, I want to talk about this. This is the Vimy Ridge War Memorial. This, I think, is one of the most important elements of Canada that's not in Canada there is, period. And I'll tell you why. Because, yes, Canada's not a perfect country. Bad things have happened in Canada. We've got a very weird history. But right there at Vimy Ridge, I will say that was the first time Canada as a nation came together on its own on the international stage to do something that no other nation was capable of doing, period. Now, you think that maybe I'm exaggerating a little bit, but I'm not. And I'm serious. I've got this is the Vimy Ridge War Memorial. This tattoo actually is the Vimy Ridge War Memorial right here. That soldier right there, that statue is actually looking out over the plains of Vimy. I can go like this. Yeah, it looks out over the plains of Vimy. And that's like the statue for the departed of both sides. That's the thing about this memorial that's so important. It's not just a Canadian memorial. It's a memorial about everybody that died and suffered on the plains of Vimy, because I'll get into it a little bit. But if you want to ever read anything that's really good about Vimy Ridge, there's this great book by Pierre Burton who's just written. Get in on that. Get a good shot of that one. I have this book. I have read it a few times, and Pierre Burton, by the way, writes all kinds of really amazing books about Canadian history, both the good and the bad and the awful things that we've done as a country. But this book is great because it breaks down the idea of Vimy Ridge and what led to Vimy Ridge, and he makes a really great point in it about how this really was the first time that Canada as a nation stood on its own on the international stage. Now, I'm not going to break into everything about what led up to Vimy and why it was so important, but to understand what made Vimy such a big deal in the very short little brief time that we have here today, the Canadian military was almost like a farce before World War I. It didn't really have the equipment, the training, the supplies, the chain of command, the authority, and the importance that it has today, which isn't saying much because they seem to treat the soldiers in Canada like utter garbage by giving them secondhand equipment all the time. It's very, very frustrating, very sad. I come from a military family, so I can say stuff like that because I hear my dad complain about it all the time. So, in the beginning of Canada's involvement in the First World War, the gear that we had was really substandard. And the reason that was is because there was a lot of corruption, meaning that the guy who was friends with the Minister of Defense owned a factory that made boots. Guess who sold boots to the military? Also, the guy's friend who made rifles also sold rifles to the Canadian military. And they were garbage. And that all changed when a guy by the name of Julian Byng took command of the Canadian military. And when he took command, this is a guy who's like a legitimate soldier. He got them new gear, he got them new boots, he got them new guns, and he got them new training. And they developed something called the Vimy Shuffle. Now, the Vimy Shuffle the idea was that artillery would be firing and the infantry would be walking right behind it. Because in trench warfare, they'd fire infantry and the soldiers would all stay low, and then they'd come back up, and then fighting would happen. This was completely different. Before the soldiers could even get up, the Canadians were already in there, which earned the Canadian soldiers the name stormtroopers. That's where the name stormtroopers came from, because that's what the Germans referred to the Canadians as stormtroopers, and then they stole the name during the Second World War for the Nazis. But we don't need to get into that. So why is it so important for the Canadians? I'll explain why. The entire Canadian military, the Army, was in one place at one time doing one thing with one goal. The Vimy Ridge was about 8 kilometers long. The French couldn't take it, and the British couldn't take it. And they were trying for 2 straight years, and they were unable to do it. And then the Canadians came in, and we're talking literally every infantryman in the entire Canadian military showed up in one spot, and they took it in 2 weeks. Think about that. Now, ostensibly, the whole battle, the main parts of the battle were fought over the course of 4 or 5 days, but there was a few little hold-up positions. So we'll say 2 weeks till they had complete and total control over the whole area. And if you want to talk about, and this isn't just white dudes. I know that people always talk about it's just white heritage and all that stuff when you talk about the war. No, not at all. There's a guy, Francis Pega-Magabao, and he is a soldier, I wrote the name, Perry Island First Nation, up in Northern Ontario. This guy is the most decorated sniper of all time. During the First World War, he had 398 confirmed kills and took over 300 prisoners on his own. That guy is a Canadian dude. He's a First Nation soldier. There's also a Métis guy by the name of Henry Norwest, who is from Fort Saskatchewan. Funny story about that guy. He joined the military, went overseas, had a few confirmed kills as a sniper, got in a fist fight with his the captain of his regiment, got sent home. After 2 weeks of being home in Alberta, he took his brother's ID, went back to the recruiting station, re-enlisted as his brother, then went back overseas and got over 100 more confirmed kills after that. So it's not just like a white race thing. It's really just about Canadian heritage and people coming together. And Francis Pagumagabao did a lot of great things for First Nations people when he came back because he got involved in the provincial government and then eventually the federal government. Very important guy. And Vimy Ridge is where all this stuff really comes together. So I'm being serious. Am I being a little bit too dramatic here? Lauren, am I getting dramatic?
No, man, you're good.
Okay, good. All right, just making sure. And what's interesting is how, like, Vimy Ridge is a huge deal in France. Like, a huge deal. Like, they're making big celebrations to commemorate the 100th anniversary because a lot of people think that Vimy Ridge was really the turning point of the First World War, and Canadians had a huge hand in that. So I really think it's important that we take note, especially given that one of Toronto's very own photographers, Rachel McKeag, is going to have a massive photography exhibit in the town of Vimy Ridge where the whole battle took place. It's very important. So there we go. I did my thing. I've been wanting to talk about that for a little while. Let's get on to something more important. Let's talk about drones with guns. This is what's happening in America right now. In Syracuse, New York, the police department is getting drones that are equipped with shotguns underneath the drones so that they can chase people down and potentially shoot people without even having to do anything. So instead of, listen, I know I've got friends that are police that do a very good job, that work very hard to be ambassadors to the community and not be jerks. But eventually you're not going to have a guy with years of training and personal and professional experience. You're going to, oh, wait, I went to the wrong picture. You're going to have this guy right here sitting in front of a computer with a joystick who's just shooting guys down like it's a video game. It's not cool. It's the first step to Skynet. This picture was out of order right there. And then eventually what happens? They go from handheld drones to Skynet. Then we've got Ed 209 walking the street, and we all know how that turned out. It wasn't very good. Now, granted, I could deal with Murphy here. I'd be fine with RoboCop. It's Ed 209 that just kind of freaks me out a little bit. All right, on to something else. Let's do something a little bit more positive, okay? Right now, Toronto is down one world record because of this guy, a Filipino guy by the name of Rick's Terabyte. The only bytes I care about are megabytes. The coolest villain from Canadian television of all time. Now this guy, Terabyte, stole a record from Toronto's very own Furious Pete. That record was for eating cheeseburgers in a minute. Pete had the record. He had 4. This guy, Terabyte, or whatever his name is, he ate 5 in 1 minute. So if you consider yourself a proud Torontonian and you really want this city to stay on the map and be amazing, you got to get in there, you got to get your kids eating, you got to give them sandwiches. Oh, Mom, I'm full. No. You know who doesn't get full? Champions don't get full. We need to get that title back. You're going to go down, you're going to sit at dinner tonight with your kids, you're going to put an egg timer. If they don't finish those burgers in a minute, they're grounded. That's what you got to do. If you want this city to be amazing, oh, by the way, can I just say, like, great little Curious George plate there, and this kid is just enjoying his pizza. That is a good time. Anyways, speaking of eating, by the way, get a good shot of this, okay? What this is my favorite thing to search on Google. Happy women eating salad. Do you know how many goddamn photos there are of women eating salad on the internet? There are millions of them. And look at them, they're all so happy. I'm so happy I'm eating salad. Nobody is ever that happy when they're eating salad. No one, period. They're all like, oh, good, salad. Oh, that's really great. But the reason I'm talking about salads is because plants know when they're being eaten. So if you think that because you're a vegetarian or a vegan, you're somehow better, get a good look. You're not. That is the shocked look that you have while eating baby spinach leaves in that large clear plastic bin that you got at Superstore earlier today. Look, you're causing plants pain. There was an experiment that was done by some scientists in the UK, and what they did is they had a caterpillar that was eating leaves off of a cabbage plant. And they zoomed in with a microscope to analyze the reactions that the plant will have while it's being eaten. Turns out that they change the flow of chloroplasts and saps and things like that inside the plant to survive whilst being eaten. So all of you feeling good because you're not eating animals and you're not causing anyone pain, you're wrong. Also, it's also been proven that when grass is mowed, it emits a hypersonic tone that is inaudible to human ears. So basically, also the smell that you get after you mow the lawn, that is your plant, your lawn screaming in agony. That's what that is. That's the smell of death. You're basically like somebody walking onto a battlefield and go, decay. So, oh, look at that. Screaming carrot demon. The reason that that is on there is because I tried to find a photo of a screaming carrot being eaten, and screaming carrot demon was the picture that came up. I just thought it was very pertinent. Now, if you look at this, this is a photograph of Africa, okay? Now, the reason that this is there is because there is an argument to be made for vegetarianism. Just hold on a second. That argument is that we feed livestock in North America almost twice as food as the people in Africa get to eat a year. I know. It's a horrible thing to say, but it is true. So basically what we're saying is whenever you see those videos for like World Vision and all that, and you're thinking like, oh, that's really sad, I should maybe do something. Maybe you should not eat as much meat. I'm not a vegetarian. Listen, I'm not. I'm not a vegetarian, and I'm not trying to get really preachy on you or anything. I'm just saying that just know that here in North America, we think cows are not just more important than people, twice as important as people. That is not funny. I do not know why I'm laughing. Let's lighten it up. Oh, there we go. Rachel Dolezal. I said lighten it up. Did you catch that? Lighten it up. Now, speaking of lightened up, Rachel Dolezal, as you might know, was the leader of the NAACP in Spokane, Washington. She gained headlines a few months ago because it turned out that the whole time that she was head of the NAACP in Spokane, Washington, she was in fact white! My God, look at her! She was raised as a white woman and then decided that she would identify as a black woman because, and she was on the Today Show the other day saying she is a hero, just like Caitlyn Jenner. That is correct. As Kate, and this is the thing, and I got a quote here. I prepared. Actually, race has been, to some extent, less biological than gender. We've evolved into understanding that gender is not binary. It's not even biological. But what strikes me as odd is that race isn't biological either. I believe that the word transracial has become socially useful in describing racial fluidity and identity. Now, the thing is that this could be deemed an offensive topic for some people. But can I just go to the picture of her with vacation braids? Because I just feel like saying something poignant when there's somebody with vacation braids behind me. Let's get in close so that we get a good shot of me and my buddy Rachel Dolezal. For all we know, she could have just gotten back from Cuba. You know, she just got back from Cuba on a vacation with her family. We don't know. But except that she identifies as a black woman. Now, the thing is right now, this is a very outlandish, weird, offensive thing to say. And I'm going to say something that might make some people upset. If you had said 20 years ago that gender fluidity would be as socially acceptable as it is today, or that it's completely normal and it's not biological and gender is not binary, people would have laughed at you and they would have gotten mad at you. I'm just saying that we are living in times where we are being a lot more accepting about what people want to be, how people feel they are, and we should be. Absolutely. Everybody can be whatever they want to be, and it's not our place to tell them who they are. Now, don't get me wrong. It is enjoyable right now to make jokes about my good friend Rachel. But maybe one day, when we're all a little bit more enlightened, we'll all have vacation braids. And we won't identify as the race we were born, you know? We should end it right now. It's very poignant.